There you go, everybody. Yeah, I know. It got jacked. That's how it goes. You know how it works around here. Always boomering it up. Hey, everybody. I want to thank you all for joining me tonight. This is a big deal for me. This is Halloween, my favorite time of year. Can't wait to get into some cool stuff with you guys. You know, some stuff for the Halloween season. You know, as you can see, I'm decked out here too. You know, so definitely representing. You know, got Myers on my chest. I had Jason on my face. So we're definitely Halloweening it up around here. And of course, later for the kiddies. Look what we got, kids. Twix. Everyone loves Twix. So you definitely want to come around the house for that. So lots of good stuff coming up here for you guys. And well, let's see here. What else we got? So yeah, let's darken it a bit. Let's get the eeriness of the holiday season in. And well, you can't really see it, I guess, if I don't do that. You got my Superman, Batman, Daredevil, all with covers that are featuring on horror. You got Batman with the knife in the mask. You got Superman with villains coming out of the ground like zombies, and of course Daredevil down here with a rope, a hangman's noose. So like I said, definitely in the Halloween spirit around this place. So you're definitely going to have some good times around here. But I want to thank you all for joining me today. Hope you're having a good one. Hope you're getting ready to have some fun festivities yourself for the Halloween season. And you know, I just want to do a little something to have a little fun here with you guys, because you know, it's always about that. You know, it's always about having a good time. So, you know, I've got some stuff lined up here for you. We're going to see we're going to talk about my favorite comic book monsters. These are monsters that are formulated in the comics. These aren't like, you know, monsters that just had comics about them. This is like ones who created specifically in the comics. And also I'm going to talk about some of my favorite lower tier horror movies. Although there's a couple in there that might not fit that mold, but I want to talk about them anyway. And then on top of that, I got a new piece of art I just got in. I mean, you guys might have seen it, but if you haven't, you're going to see it here tonight. I'm going to show you, again, just more to get you in the theme of the Halloween season. So I want to thank you all for joining me today, and just say, if you like what you see here, hit a like, help out those algorithms, always appreciated. And I'll also share out some links here so we can bring more people in. I always want to get more people in on this action. Have a good time. I hope you like that intro I did, even though I kind of muffled it up there a bit. But hey, you know, like I said, it wouldn't be this channel if it wasn't boomering something up somewhere, right? So let's get on with it here and move right into the show. And you know, and make sure you're subscribed if you're not subscribed already, so you don't miss any of this boomering content that I'm putting out here for you guys. So let's go ahead and start sharing the screen here and seeing some pretty cool stuff. So we're gonna make me small and get me off of there because you don't need to see my face. You know, that's a horror in all of itself. You don't need to see that. No. So let's get this going. And we're going to start with my favorite comic book monsters. And of course, how can you talk about your favorite comic book monsters and not mention probably the most famous comic book monster of them all, the Incredible Hulk? You know, this guy is the original, you know, comic book Mr. Hyde. You know, that's what it's all about. His whole transformation back from a mild-mannered guy to a behemoth of a monster. Great stuff, you know, and they've done so much with him over the years, you know, so many different layers, like an onion. They've put so many interesting things into him. And one of the most interesting things to me is how the Hulk has never wanted to not be the Hulk. You know, like a lot of people, if they're turned into monsters like this, they want to go back to being just normal. And the Hulk, though, he never has. He's always wanted to be who he is. You know, even when he wears the childlike Hulk of like the 70s, or the gray Hulk here, which is my personal favorite, or the Professor Hulk that came later, the one with the merged banner, all the different versions, always the Hulk wanted to be the Hulk. He never wanted to be anything else. He was always happy being the monster that he is. And that's something that's, you know, kind of unique, I think, with a lot of monsters, like people who transform into monsters. It's normally like when they transform, they want to stay human. And the Hulk was never like that. The Hulk was always head up. I like being the Hulk smash, you know, leave Hulk alone. You know, that's all it is. He was always about himself, and I love that. And of course, this is my favorite version, the Todd McFarlane version with Peter David, the gray Hulk. I love the smack talk. I love the attitude. You know, it gave a new dimension to the Hulk. That, you know, unlike the Hulk I grew up watching when I watched the Bill Bixby show, who never talked, you know, and the childlike Hulk who spoke in third person. This was a Hulk that was much more sophisticated, much more intelligent, you know, and just the attitude, you know, he just taking no guff. You know, he'll slap you around and laugh at you while he does it. That was fun for me. I love this version of the Hulk. I really enjoyed that a lot. And you know, again, Peter David's script on it was perfect. You know, his whole he took that whole multiple personality thing and really ran with it, made it into like basically like the backbone of the series from that point on. And so definitely a good one here is the Hulk. I'm sure a lot of you guys out there probably feel the same way as I do. You love the Hulk. You love what he does. You love what he's about. And but of course, you can't talk about the Hulk and not talk about the flip side to him, which of course is the Thing. And the Thing is like more like what I said before, where like he's a monster, but he wishes he was human again. And that's the tragedy of the Thing is, he's a man stuck in a monstrous body that he doesn't want. Whereas the Hulk was always like he wants to be the Hulk. The Thing doesn't really want to be the Thing. He just wants to be good old Ben Grimm. And also the other flip side of them is how the Hulk, although he's done heroic things, he's always been seen as the monster, and people have went after him and gone for him, and just he's always hunted and hounded. Whereas the Thing, he's a monster, and yet he's heralded as a hero. And that's kind of an interesting parallel between the two, which is probably why whenever they get together, there's always some slobber knocking fisticuffs going on, because they kind of probably remind each other a little too much of themselves, and then of course in the ways that the Thing has acceptance, the Hulk doesn't, but the Hulk has the acceptance of himself that the Thing doesn't, and it just irks them, and that's probably why they've always clashed quite so much over the years. And whenever they're together, it's always a good time. The monster mash, as I call it, that is. And so just great. Here's a great image of the Thing by Art Adams. And again, just look at the design, the rockiness. You can always feel like the roughness of the skin there. I love that, and you got him, crouched down. So the Thing is going to be large, but he's not going to be 7 foot tall. He's going to look like a tall guy, but yet he's squatty, but yet he's massive. And that's what you get in this. And that's a thing some people, have a problem with when they're drawing the Thing, is they don't know quite sure how to get that squattiness so that he looks large, but yet not, either super short or super tall or too tall. And that's, again, just a little fun thing about him. But yeah, I always like the Thing, the classic, the monster who wishes he wasn't, again, another time old honored tradition. And then now we're going on my next choice here. And hey, it's Ghost Rider, of course, but not just any Ghost Rider, the Danny Ketch Ghost Rider. That's the Ghost Rider. That's my Ghost Rider. I was like 16 years old when this book came out. This is my Ghost Rider. I love the design. I love the bike. I love the biker look with the boots and the leather jacket. It just it speaks much more to a rider to me than the Johnny Blaze version did back in the 70s. He looked more like a he looked more like he was a stunt driver and all, and that's a thing, is it never felt like a biker to me. This says biker, and yet I like that about it. And again, just the mystery aspect to him that they had early on with the character. Who is he? Is he really Zarathos? Is he somebody else? What's his deal? Even he doesn't know who he really is. And again, just like with the Hulk and the Thing, there's a transformation involved. And this one is, at first, Danny Ketch is like horrified with the transformation. He sees the Ghost Rider is very violent and very unyielding in what he does, and it disgusts him. But as time goes on, he kind of learns more about what the Ghost Rider is doing, is he's actually doing good stuff, even if he is a little harsh in how he puts out the vengeance there. And they kind of come to an understanding later in the series. And again, it was a fun one that I liked a lot. And again, I love the chain that it would just pop off and turn these little spiky pieces that just would fly everywhere and cut through stuff. And of course his pen and stare was always my favorite. You just look in someone's soul and just make them feel the pain they've inflicted on others. And I always thought that was the coolest power to ever have. If I could have any superpower, that's probably the one I want, to just look in you in the eyes and make you feel the pain you've caused others. That's the ultimate vengeance right there to me. So definitely one I liked. I've always loved the Ghost Rider Danny Ketch version. Again, it's my generation's Ghost Rider, and I said the design, the backstory, the mystery, the powers, all of it was just a really great visual for it. And you can't go wrong with a guy like Tex as your artist. And I think this might even be Javier Soteris as on pencils. So him and Javier together were great. And then when Tex went on to do it alone, it got even greater. That gritty style he has just works so well with a urban street type of vengeance seeker like the Ghost Rider here. So definitely one I liked a lot. And so we'll go on to the next one here. Now, this was a little more esoteric. This is Clayface, but if you know anything about the history, there's multiple men who wear the name of Clayface. There was the original Clayface from the Golden Age, who was an actor who wore a mask. And then you have the Clayface of the Silver Age, who he was like the one that everybody probably knows best because you've seen him in Batman, the animated series. He's the guy who has a body that's made of clay and can like shape it and look like anything or anyone that he wants. That's the one that most people know. This is the Bronze Age Clayface. Clayface 3, Preston Payne, who again, he to me is like the Frankenstein of the Clayface line. Because what happened is Preston Payne, he was disfigured by birth. There was a birth defect, and he wanted a way to help people who had his problem and to solve it for himself. And he thought he could do it using the blood of the second Clayface, Matt Hagen. And so he does this. He creates his serum and injects himself. And at first it works. He's able to mold his face and make himself look normal. And it lasts, at first it works, but then eventually it doesn't. And his face starts to run, and you can see like here in the suit that he's in, how the face is running like wet clay. And, he couldn't keep his body together. And worse than that is what he calls the fever, where he gets like this burning sensation inside that's just like eating him from the inside out. And the only way to relieve it is to touch somebody. And to, as you can see here in this great image by Norm Brayfogle and Steve Mitchell, just transfer it into someone else, and then they are the ones who melt away like clay. And that's the only thing that takes the pain away from him for a while. And and you can see he wears this exosuit because his body is now so loosely congealed that it can't hold itself together very well. He needs the power of the suit to be able to move. And like I said, it's a very sad story for the character, a very sad story for this particular monster. Like I said, I kind of see him as Frankenstein in a way, but instead of where Frankenstein created a monster that went amok, Preston Payne made himself the monster, and it went amok. It's science gone wrong. And again, it's a great aspect of this character, something I've always enjoyed. And I've always liked whenever I've seen him show up in Batman's comics and whatnot. Good stuff. It's always a good story when the pitiful Preston Payne shows up. So definitely, again, another favorite of mine. And again, just the thing of the touch is just so horrific. To know that when you touch somebody skin to skin, that something like this would happen. That's just, oh my God, that's just horrible, horrible. And it's like that to me is the true horror. And because he doesn't want to do this, but he doesn't see, he says one way, even there's only one way to end the pain I'm feeling. I have to transfer it. He doesn't want to do it, but he has to, because that's the only way he can keep the pain from eating him alive. And it's just, like I said, a very sad, even more sad than the Hulk. Even more sad than the Thing. This guy is a true pitiful character, but again, a monster all the same, and I love it. Great stuff. Just a very well engineered character like that I think has been highly underutilized over the years. But like I said, every time he shows up, I know it's always going to be a good story. So we move on to the next one here. We got Zax. Now, this is one that's a little more esoteric, and well, sorry about that. I had someone at the door, but yeah. So this is a little more esoteric than most of the others you're going to see here. But I've liked this because it's just he's living energy. That's all he is. He's a creature made out of living energy. And that's something that's very interesting to me, because a lot of things you think about like the Thing or the Hulk, they pound stuff, but Zax is just energy. And it's how do you battle a creature that is pure energy? And so I've really liked this, and I like the design. I mean, the way it looks, the shape of a body, but yet it's all electrified. It's all just, like I said, just currents of energy forming a form that you are familiar with. And I really like that a lot. Again, and this is by the great Steve Geiger, probably one of the most underrated comic artists, that I've ever seen. And, I really enjoyed this. I really liked it a lot. He's a great character. Again, just like Clayface, highly underutilized. You don't see Zax a whole lot, but he's pretty impressive when you do see him. Just again, one of those monsters that never quite got the popularity of like the Hulk or the Thing or even the Ghost Rider, but he's a very interesting character to see in action. And we got our Got someone in here now. We got our good friend Ligkick. Hey, hello, my friend. Happy Halloween, my friend. I hope you're having a good one. Like I said, we're getting into the my favorite monsters here. We're coming close to the end. So let's go on to the next one here. And it's the final one. My probably one of my favorite monsters, Fin Fang Foom. I mean, just the name alone, and you just know it's going to be good. And he's any story you ever heard about King Arthur or the Knights of the Round Table. When you think dragons, you're thinking of a character like Zax. When you think of Lord of the Rings, you think of a character like Fin Fang Foom here. That's what you think of as the classic dragon archetype for like the monster that the hero must slay. And I love this character. This is a great image of him by John Romita Jr. and Bob Wyacek from their Iron Man run. And just look at the way they do the line work on the body to make it all scaly and rough looking. Like it feels like it's hard leather just looking at him, which is what you would expect of like the scaly skin of a dragon. And again, they've done some moderating of moderations of what his origins are. I think the last ones I remember was he was actually from a race of aliens that had come to Earth, and that's how the Mandarin ended up getting his 10 rings and all this stuff. That's how they tied him in with Iron Man. But I've always just thought you don't need any of that. He's just a monster. Monsters exist everywhere. And one of my favorites is an issue of was Astonishing Tales number 24. Which has him battling a creature called the Living Colossus, which is a statue that a guy could project his mind into and make it come alive. And they battle, and it's even on the cover in kung fu action. You see you see the Living Colossus with like a telephone pole holding up like a staff, and you see Fin Fang Foom coming in like karate chopping it. And it's so ridiculous, but it's so awesome at the same time. I've always loved this character. He's like I said, he's again just like with Zax, it's one you don't see a whole lot. But man, when he shows up, it's going to be good because he's just that impressive of a figure. I mean, this is Marvel's Godzilla basically, and I love that about it. And as a fan of Godzilla, how could I not love Fin Fang Foom? He's just so impressive. I wish we could see more of him more often, but I understand why we don't. And we got more here from Legkick. By Beast was cool, so was Half-Life. Yeah, they're cool, but again, they're not going to rank among my favorites. We got the Hulk, the Thing, the Danny Ketch Ghost Rider, Preston Payne, Clayface 3, Zax, and now Fin Fang Foom. I mean, these guys are among the elites of the monsters. You're not gonna find too many who rise to the level these characters have. Yes, indeed. He is a Kirby creation. That is true, my friend. Absolutely. Because I believe it was in Thor is where he first appeared, if I'm remembering correctly. I believe that's where he first appeared, was in the issue of Thor. Yeah, Abomination, but again, he's more a derivative of the Hulk, really. He's got the same power set, the same look. It doesn't quite reach there. Yeah, the Wendigo. Yeah, the whole cannibalistic side. That's definitely one that would be kind of scary. I'm sure. That's definitely in the horror theme of a man eater. But again, I just I never found the Wendigo very very impressive to me. Like I said, these are just my favorites. But others I'm sure would totally agree with you. Yeah, the Midgar Serpent and Magog, yeah, like I said, I know these other characters, but they just never resonated with me the way the ones I'm showing here have done, and that's, like I said, this is just my personal list, but there you go, 6 of my all-time favorite comic book monsters, and I think anybody, if you see any stories with them, I think you'll enjoy them. They really are well-told stories, and again, they did the level of excitement they bring when I see them is always one that I've always enjoyed. So definitely some of my favorites right there. But now we're going to get on in to the biggest part of this, which of course is we're going to talk about some horror movies that are some of my favorites. And like I said, most of these are going to be of the lower budget variety, but there's a couple that aren't, but most of them are. And again, you can probably see why they're low budget. But again, I'm going to try to show you, while they may be low budget, it doesn't mean that they're low in quality. Yes, Marvel did. Marvel has. I'll definitely agree with you there, my friend. Marvel has way more fantastic monsters in their catalogs than DC does, I think. So yeah, it's probably why you saw on my list there was only one DC character that was a monster that I had, and probably part of the reason why is they didn't seem to really focus on making some really cool monsters, but Marvel really did. Marvel has a lot of great monster characters in their pantheon. That is absolutely true. But we're going to move into the movie portion now, and I think you guys are going to enjoy this because again, you're going to see some movies. Maybe you've heard of them, maybe you haven't, but these are just some of my favorites, and we're going to get into that and have some fun with that. So let's start in. Well, we'll start in with the master. Why not? The master himself, Hitchcock, Psycho. I love this film. It's a quiet kind of horror. It's not like in your face because even at the very beginning of the film, we don't even know it's a horror film. It seems more like it's like some kind of like drama or romantic, type of, psychodrama. It doesn't feel like a horror film. Of course, that doesn't happen until we kind of reach the famous shower scene. But if you watch throughout the movie, you see certain tricks in the cameras, certain tricks in the pacing that Hitchcock uses to kind of set you up to get to that point. And the character of Norman Bates, Anthony Perkins, is just so perfect in this because he is so understated. He doesn't like play over the top villainous. He's not obvious. I mean, he's very quiet, very reserved. He's like the guy you would least expect to be a killer, and yet he is. And but they play up the mystery of it by having you think it's the mother who's the killer, because every time you see someone killed, you see the wig and the dress, but you don't see the face. See, and that was Hitchcock's genius of like keeping them in shadow until the very end of the film. Till the very end, till right here. This is it. The scene at the end. This is when we finally learned it. Norman is the killer. He is the one who is the killer. And it's a great reveal. You might not see it coming. It's Which Psycho? I mean, are you talking about the remake or are you talking about the original? The original, I think Janet Leigh has been dead for quite some time. I don't think she was at a horror con recently. But if you're talking about Anne Heche, who did the remake, which to me is a travesty, this is like a perfect horror movie. You don't need to remake Psycho. It's perfect the way it is. Some movies should not be remade, and this is definitely one of them. But yes, this is what we got here. I love this. Again, it's just the mystery, the horror. I mean, you don't really feel scared until the shower scene, and then you're thinking it's the mother, it's not Norman. And but there are moments like the scene when what is it? The boyfriend shows up trying to find the investigator that Norman has just killed, and he's sinking the car in the swamp, and there's that scene of like the guy screaming his name, Arbogast, and then they cut to a scene of Norman out there in the swamp, and he's like, it's all this heavy shadow. He's wearing a black shirt, and he's like turns and looks, and that look on his face, that expression, is just pure, pure horror to me. It's like that's the moment Norman looks scary. He looked very scary in that scene. And but I mean, the genius in this is how Hitchcock flipped the script on you, because your whole point of view for the first like 45 minutes of the film is on Janet Leigh's character. She's the central figure, and then he kills her. And so, like, well, who do you do? What do you do now? Now all you have left is Norman Bates, and he's now who you gravitate to, and you start to have like empathy towards Norman at first, like the scene when he's cleaning up the mess. You think he's being a dutiful son, trying to look out for his crazy mother. And that's what he's doing. And when he pushes the car into the swamp and it's going down and down, and then it stops. And he's like looking around like, oh God, what am I going to do? You start to feel tense, like, oh God, is he going to get caught? Is he not going to be able to get away with this? And then bloop, 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 he starts going back down, and then he gets relieved and you get relieved. That's the whole thing about this. It's the way he messes with your head. The way he messes with your head. Oh, there must be a more modern take or something. Yeah, I didn't. I didn't know. I don't know that name. That's not a name I'm familiar with. But yeah, there you are. It's This is a classic of all times. You know, it's a reason. There's a reason everyone loves Psycho, and you know, I said the mystery, the revelations, the great camera work, the excellent score by Bernard Herrmann. I mean, him and Hitchcock. I mean, they're like they're like you know peanut butter and jelly. You know, they just go perfect together. And you know, again, this is an interesting thing though that I found out about this. Oh, what's this? Oh, okay. She's the body double. Okay, I see. Cool. Okay, okay. Yeah, I kind of figured that there had to be some kind of double. I didn't know her name though. Thank you for that information, my friend. But information I found out not too long ago is that of all his films, this is not among Hitchcock's favorites. In fact, he kind of downs it a bit. He doesn't see it. To him he wondered, why is this so popular? Why does everyone love this movie so much? Because he didn't think it was any great shakes of his work. You know, there was others he's done that he felt were much more indicative of his style. Like I think it was Shadow of a Doubt is one that Hitchcock considers to be one of his finest. And you know, Psycho is nothing like that. And yet, when people say Alfred Hitchcock, what's the first movie you think of? It's likely Psycho. And that's what you got with this. And so, like I said, to me, the impact he made with this is something that even Hitchcock himself was not ready for and didn't think, himself as like he just doesn't get it. But I think all of us do. The whole thing of someone who's crazed like that, who's overly devoted to somebody or something to the point of like insanity. It bespeaks to something in the human creature. And I really, like I said, I just love this film. It's one of my favorite Hitchcock's films, probably second only to Rope. That's how good this movie is to me. So I mean, I definitely don't agree with Hitchcock on his thoughts on what the movie is, but I definitely do think that it's a great film and one everyone, if you haven't seen it yet, sure, we all know the shower scene, we all know the fact of what happens, we all know that Norman's the killer in the end. It's all gets been told. You've never seen the film, that, but you should see the film anyway, just so you can get the full bore effect of it. And like I said, it's just an excellent film. So next up on the agenda, of course, is another one. This is from my time. I grew up with this, A Nightmare on Elm Street, the first one, which, if you think about this, a lot of people would say, well, oh, Freddy Krueger's not very low budget. Well, maybe the later versions weren't after it was popular and they started spending more money for the visual effects and things like that. But this first one, Wes Craven's first film on this truly is the low budget film. This didn't have a lot of money spent on it. And in fact, if you know anything about the history here, at the time, Robert Englund, who's Freddy Krueger, he wasn't a big name. Johnny Depp is in this. This is like his first film. And then of course you got Heather Langenkamp, again, not a big name. The biggest name actor in this film is John Saxon, who plays Heather Langenkamp's father, the sheriff. He's the big star. He's the biggest name in the film. Who he had done stuff in the 60s and the 70s. So like he was a well-known property. Everyone else is almost like newcomers, almost like they've done very little and nothing really significant to this point. And, I've always liked this because, it's basically the story of the boogeyman. He's going to get you when you sleep. And, out of all the horror monsters in the 80s, the slasher monsters that I grew up with, Freddy's my favorite because, he doesn't just kill you. He like messes with you while he's killing you. He's playing tricks on you. He's laughing at you. He's making gallows humor and like snide comments. As he doesn't just kill you physically. He's like trying to kill you mentally too. He's like giving you the full bore. It's like it's funny because if you actually watch the films, you never see him use the claw hand very much. And even in the later installments, you didn't see a lot of the claw where he's just slashing people and slashing them to death. Like, a Michael Myers or a Jason Voorhees, they're just hitting you with an axe or hitting you with a butcher knife, and that's all they do. Freddy, he like comes up with these creative ways to mess with you and to like to mess with your head and to kill you that has nothing to do with his claw glove. He doesn't really use it all that much, which is kind of interesting to me that they would go that route, to go the route of he's got this weapon right there at hand, and yet he rarely ever uses it. Oh, like I said, this is why I found this so fascinating. And I like that they infer, they kind of intimate that maybe he does something to the kids before he kills them, but they never explicitly say it. it's kind of like they're leaving it up to the audience's mind. Do you think he's doing a little something something to the kids before he kills them, or is it just he just torments them and kills them? And it's kind of left up to the audience to decide that. And but like here again, one of the most famous scenes in the film, the famous bedroom scene with Johnny Depp, where he gets pulled down into the bed, and then just a geyser of blood comes up out of the bed, and it just like hits the ceiling, and it's just all over everything. Just again, this is like one of the most gruesome deaths in the film. And again, this is Johnny Depp's first film. I mean, you look how young he is. My God, I think he's like 20 years old here, I think, making this film. I mean, my Lord. Yes, he like I said, he kind of is. But it's not even so much he's in your head. He's the boogeyman. He's the one that's going to get you in your sleep, the one who's going to get you in the darkness. That's who he is. And, it's how do you get away from that? You can't really. It's impossible. Don't go to sleep. That's it. That's how the only way you keep Freddy away. But yeah, I've loved Freddy. It's just he's the evil monster with a sense of humor. Dark though it is, but he always, like I said, Jason and Michael Myers and all the rest, they seem like just to kill people like out of instinct. Just out of repetitive, I got to kill you. That's what I got to do. Freddy has fun with it. Freddy enjoys this stuff. He has a good time when he's killing you. He's laughing at you while he's killing you. And that always made him stand a little head and shoulders above the rest of the slasher killers that, I grew up watching in like the 80s and the early 90s. So definitely, again, the Nightmare on Elm Street and just the way they blend in, like, reality and the dream world and, what's real and what isn't, it's almost like, it's all dependent on your state of mind, and just, just a very well told story. I think, again, it just, and the killer who, again, just is, head and tails above the rest of his kind of genre. Yeah, that's kind of what it is. They're just like animals. They're just like, it's like they kill out of instinct because it's just what they know. It's what they do. Whereas Freddy, he does do that, but he's enjoying this stuff. He's having fun. Like I remember in part 3, there's got the kid who's in a wheelchair, and in his dream state he can walk because he's the wizard master and he has all these magical powers. And Freddy, what's he do? He sends a giant, monstrous looking, wheelchair after him, and it slashes the kid in his knees, and he falls to the ground, and he comes over to Freddy and he goes, "It's the chair for you, kids." See, there's the humor. He's mocking you as he's killing you. That's what made Freddy different from all the rest of the time. All those killers and stuff. That's what made it a lot of fun for anyone who was watching the films. So yeah, definitely Nightmare on Elm Street, the first one. Definitely a classic. Definitely one that you should check out. If you've ever had any interest in Freddy Krueger, don't go see the remake. By the way, the remake is awful, as most remakes are. But now we're going to get on to my next one, and this is a lower budget one. This is one that I might have talked about before, but this is Frightmare, and this to me is a film that sort of blended, although maybe imperfectly, but still tried to blend the classic, say like Gothic Hammer horror style with the more modern 80s slasher film. Because the story here is, it's about a guy played by the great Ferdinand Main, a very well-known actor at this time, and he's supposed like this big horror star. And when he dies, this group of like college kids who have a film group at their college go to his mausoleum and steal his body to party with Conrad one last time. And in the midst of all this, Conrad was somehow resurrected back to life, and then he seeks vengeance on those who have desecrated his mausoleum and stolen his body. And just so like the first half of the movie is like this Gothic horror type stuff. It's not like scary, like because it's not jump scares, it's not in your face stuff, like a Freddy Krueger slashing you up or whatever. No, it's none of that. It's a Gothic kind of horror. It's very eerie, very like twisted in some ways, and there's not a lot of blood and gore or any of that kind of stuff in it. But then once Conrad comes back to life, then like the real horror begins, because that's when you get, like I said, it moves away from the classic Gothic horror into the more modern slasher films. And you're going to see that here with the image I have for you. See, there he is right there. This is like, right towards the end of the film. He's got like psychokinetic powers. He got telepathy. He's got psychokinesis and pyrokinesis. He can't be stopped. And but it's funny because again, when you're watching the film, you see him with all these powers now that he's returned from the dead. But there's this one scene where he kills somebody with a sword. He just pulls a sword off the wall and beheads the guy. And it's like, well, wait a minute, you got psychokinetic powers. Why are you using a sword to kill somebody? But see, again, that's just some fun and zaniness in some of these lower budget films that you get. Stuff that like doesn't quite make sense, but you just kind of roll with it. Because it's just so cool to see him like lop somebody's head off. Just kind of really neat to see that happen. And this is just this is Ferdinand Main is going. He's doing his best. What's his name? Christopher. Oh damn it, I'm blanking on the name, but like he played Dracula. He was in The Howling 2. He's doing his best impersonation of that actor in this film. I mean, you can see it in his stance, in the look in his face, the way he's dressed. He's trying to do his best impersonation of this guy, and it's not quite hitting, I think, the way he wants. But it's still pretty funny, and just again, there's a lot of cheeseballness in this. There's a lot of scenes. They're just just kind of silly, but it's a lot of fun that way. It makes it fun when you see these craziness, like the way he uses his psychokinetic powers and lights somebody on fire. There's one where a guy's looking over like over a ledge, and all of a sudden his hand comes up and he grabs and he pulls and literally rips the guy's tongue out of his mouth. Yes, thank you, my friend. Leg kick with the save for me. Yes, Christopher Lee. Yes, that's who he's trying to emulate here is Christopher Lee. You can see it, and when you watch the performance of his character, when he speaks and the way he walks and the way he moves, body language and the inflection of tone in his voice, you can see he's trying to emulate a Christopher Lee type of a character, like the kind of character you saw him in his films, in the horror films he did. So yeah, definitely Frightmare. Again, it's not great. It's not great art. But to me, it's a movie that kind of bridges the gap. This is from 1983, and it kind of bridges the gap. Although I do remember my friend told me that this was actually filmed in 81, but it sat on a shelf for a couple years for some reason. But yeah, so like this is like a film that sort of bridges the gap between the classic Gothic horror of old and the modern day slasher of the time. And I kind of like it for that. It kind of like tries to marry those two together. And again, like I said, some of it works and some of it doesn't, but I appreciate the effort in the fact that, that they're trying to do something, to show that, the way horror has changed over time, and I always like that about it. So this is always going to be a favorite of mine. There's a lot of great lines you can run from it, stuff people say in the film that's just funny and entertaining. So yeah, definitely on Frightmare, I would say is definitely one you should check out if you're a fan of any kind of horror. If you like the classic horror, if you like the modern horror, you probably enjoy Frightmare on some level. And then we come to my next one here. It's Duel. Now this one, of course, as we all know, this was never actually an actual full-length feature movie. This was actually done on television, a TV movie. And it's Steven Spielberg's very first work. And, again, I got to say, it's just, this one is all about feeling claustrophobic, even though you're out in the open. For any of you who don't know, it features Dennis Weaver, very well-known actor at the time, and he's on the road, and for some reason, this trucker just keeps wanting to mess with him. Everywhere he goes, the guy is there, and he's cutting him off. He's chasing him down the road. There's this one scene where Weaver has to wait at a railroad crossing, and because the lights are going off, and the truck comes up behind, starts pushing him trying to push him onto the tracks. I mean, this guy is just totally messing with Weaver. Like it says like even here, the killer's weapon is a 40-ton truck. The victim's only defense, a startling trap. And that's basically the story. Just a guy who's put in this crazy circumstance, but the film feels so claustrophobic. Even though you're in a car, even though you're driving around in like these hills and valleys and desert scrub lands, where there's all this open space, and yet it feels claustrophobic. Because everywhere he goes, the guy is there. He's there. He can't get away from this guy. He's everywhere, it seems. No matter how hard he tries. And there's this one scene when he's like running from him, and he's going up this embankment. He's going up like this side of this mountain, and all of a sudden his car starts to overheat. And he's slowing down and slowing down. You can see the rig coming up behind him, just coming up faster and faster. And he's like, "Come on, come on, come on!" The tension in the film is just so tight, and it's just you just can't. You're wondering what's going to happen next, because no matter what this guy does, he can't get away from this guy. And of course, here's again near the end of the film. This is the Starling trap. He sets him up by going to a precipice, and he parks his car there. And he waits for the guy with the truck to come want to ram him, and he jumps out at the last second, and then the guy hits the car, and they both go over. And just a very taut story. It's like there's not a whole lot to it, and it relies a lot on the great camera work and a lot on just the tension of the moment, of feeling that claustrophobic feeling of like everywhere you go, this truck is there. No matter where you go, he's going to find you. And it's like there's no place to hide, there's nowhere to run, he's everywhere. And it's a great little story like that. Again, it shows you how horror doesn't have to be full of blood and guts and gore. This is horrific, because this could be real. You could have this, road rage is a real thing in our society. This could be real today. This could happen to you. Some crazed guy in a truck who just has a bugaboo about something, and maybe you cut him off, or maybe he thinks you did, or whatever. And he just decides, I'm just gonna take it out on this guy, and that could happen to you. It makes it very scary. This is like a real. It's not like Freddy Krueger, the boogeyman, is going to get you in your sleep. We know that isn't real, but this is real, and that makes it scary. It makes it scarier than anything else you could ever think about. And that's what I like about this film, is the tautness, the tense, the intensity of the tension, and the claustrophobic feeling, and you've just got nowhere to run, and it's all real. And that's the genius of this. It's just, again, this shows why Spielberg is Steven Spielberg to people. Even though in more latter years he's kind of lost his touch, but back then this is the man. This is what he could do. And just again, with just a simple little premise like this, and he created a masterclass of tension. So definitely check it out. Duel. That's definitely one of my favorites. You guys, it will have you scared to be on the road anytime you're around a big rig. But now we'll move on to my next. And of course, now I said, of course, you heard me say earlier that, most remakes are garbage. And that is absolutely true. Most remakes are garbage because they remake good films or great films. They don't need to remake, like Psycho or, A Nightmare on Elm Street. You don't need to remake a film like that. They're already perfect as they are. They don't need your help. This is one of my rare exceptions, The Fly by David Cronenberg. And when you hear David Cronenberg, you know it's going to be weird and you know it's going to be gross. That's just two things are going to happen in a Cronenberg film. And, just be afraid, be very afraid. And it's like, that's all you need. So again, they're not telling you, but I like this because, again, they've remade the classic Fly movie, but with a modern twist. Instead of it being a science experiment gone wrong with what they did in the old film, and here it's dealing with, technology, the modern technology of teleportation. And of course, we all know the story is like this guy played by Jeff Goldblum is an eccentric type, but he's a brilliant scientist, and he creates a teleportation device. And when he's testing it out, a fly accidentally gets into the machine with him, and rather than teleporting them both separately, the computer, because it doesn't understand the two different, DNA matrices of the two individuals inside, the fly and the man, it merges them together, and then slowly over time, the fly side, the fly DNA, I guess you'd say, starts to overtake his human DNA, and he becomes more and more monstrous as it goes on. And, there's a whole story with, Gina Davis, who was very beautiful at the time, having a relationship with this guy. And then he's slowly going kind of like, just scaring her more and more. And of course, she had relations with him after the event. And so now there's a great scene where she has a horrific dream about birthing the child, and it's like a larva. I mean, just horror, just crazy, wild stuff that, again, this is what Cronenberg does to you. He messes with you that way. He wants to gross you out as much as he can. And, but again, it's a science gone wrong type of thing. Just like with my Clayface 3 monster choice in the comics, it's science gone wrong. And again, this is a little more far-fetched than some, but again, it's not that far-fetched. You could imagine that in the future, if we have such technology, something like that could happen to somebody. They could get their molecules mixed with something else, and then it's going to completely make them into something that they never were. It's just a very scary look at what the possible future could be, and how technology can go awry, even if that's not your intention. We all know that the whole thing of the atom bomb. It's the ability to split the atom. It's a great source of energy. But what happened with it? We created the world's worst weapon known to man, the most destructive force in nature. And that's how it can go with technology. The technology itself is not evil, but it can create evil when people use it for evil intent. And that's kind of what this kind of plays on, is that whole thing of like, technology is not your friend. It's not there to help you or to be. It's up to you to do it. And if it goes wrong, it can really go wrong. And as you can see here with our image, I mean, look at what happens to Jeff Goldblum. I mean, I can't imagine what it was like to have to film the latter half of this movie for him, where he's looking like this. I mean, the makeup alone that he had to put on for this. I mean, and it's not just even like on his face. I mean, look at it. You can see his shoulder and his back there. And oh my God, it's just horrible. Oh, and this isn't even the worst that he gets. He gets worse as it goes on. It's crazy. Yeah, I could say there's a little bit of a Hulk vibe, but the thing is in this, though, he's not able to go back to being normal the way Banner can. Banner, he transforms into Hulk, but then after he calms down, he goes back to normal. This guy doesn't get to return to him. He just gets worse and worse and worse as it goes on. It's just, wow, it's just crazy. I mean, the scene where he's fighting with John Getz, who's in this film. He's a friend who also, he has interest in Gina Davis's character, like sort of like a rival, but also a friend. And he's fighting against him, and he does what flies do. If you guys know anything about flies and their entomology, they puke on what they eat. They puke on it and dissolve it and then slurp it back up. That's what flies do. That's how they eat. And so he's fighting him, and he like basically pukes on his arm and like rips his hand off, because the acid eats away at like the wrist of his hand, and he rips it right off. It's like, oh my God, it's so insane, But again, I just really love it. Again, the gross factor aside, you're definitely going to need a strong constitution if you're watching this film when you get to the latter half of the film. But it's again, I just love the whole science gone wrong angle. It's a classic theme that you see in a lot of horror, of science going wrong, and this one does it. And again, this is a remake of a classic film that did the same thing, but I thought it was a good modernization. It's a rare thing to get a remake that is as good or better than the original that it's aping. And I think The Fly is definitely one of those in that shortlist category of remakes that are actually worthwhile and actually bring something to the table that maybe you didn't get in the original. And that's why this is so good. It's a well-told remake that has something to say on its own beyond just, we're just doing the same movie over again. And I like that. So definitely want to check out The Fly. You don't want, like I said, you need to have a strong stomach, because it's not going to be fun when you get to that latter half of the film. But it's a great drama, great horror, great characters, and again, people who we all know in later years went on to like lots of bigger and better things. Gina Davis and Jeff Goldblum, they were probably at the height of their attractiveness at this period. So definitely one worth checking out. Then, of course, now we go to the next one, and it's Stephen King's Pet Sematary. Because, again, you really can't talk about horror films and probably not have something Stephen King related in it. And, this is a favorite of mine, because, again, it shows us, like here, sometimes dead is better, and it truly is. And it's, to me, this is like the story of man's sort of, I don't want to say indifference, but like his reservations about death. He hates death. He fears it. He wants to find a way to overcome it. And that's what this plays on that fear. We know we're all going to die someday, and we don't want to die. So what can we do to keep ourselves alive longer? What can we do to keep things rolling? How are we going to make that work? And Pet Cemetery kind of plays into that, because you got, the whole, basically it's a story of like what happens when you lose someone close to you. How far are you willing to go to bring them back? If you could bring them back, how far would you go? And that's what this does, because what happens is, of course, is a child gets killed. And, this is the pet cemetery where you're supposed to bury your pets to bring them back, but the pets never come back quite the same way again, because it happened first with a cat. A cat died and the guy took it to the pet cemetery and it came back, but it's kind of evil now. It's not a friendly cat like it used to be. It's very, very feral, very vicious. And when his child is killed, like his little like 2-3-year-old child is killed in a horrible accident, he does the same thing and puts the child in the pet cemetery to bring him back, because he can't go on without his child. And then of course the child comes back evil, and then that's when the horror really begins, because the thing the child does to the people in around him, to his friend Judd, played by the great Fred Gwynne, who we all know as Herman Munster. There's a scene where like he's trying to find the kid after he's running around in the house, and he's looking around, and the kid's under the bed, and he slides off under the bed and uses a knife and slices the Achilles tendon in his leg. And it's like, oh, that hurt. I mean, I felt the pain when I saw that the first time. My leg was hurting. And just, then he slices him in the face and just all this stuff. And then what he does to his mother, played by Denise Crosby, who most of you probably know best from Star Trek: The Next Generation. He kills her, and then he tries to kill his father. But of course, the father ends up having to kill him instead. He injects him with some stuff and kills the child. But then he's killed the woman. So now he's not only lost a child, his wife is dead too. And again, the grief overcomes him, and he puts her in the pet cemetery to bring her back. And it's even more eerie when he does it with her, because her face is mangled by the kid. So when she comes back, she has a mangled face, but she's alive. And of course, the way it ends is, a scream at the end. It goes black. He sees her, he hugs her, and then it goes to black, and there's a scream. And it's just like, the horror continues. But yeah, this is what I liked about it. And here it is. This is the perfect image of the tone of what the whole story is about. The inability to accept death, the inability to accept the loss of someone close to you, the inability to deal with that trauma, with that pain, and what you would do to make it go away if you had the ability to make it go away. Oh, I'll have to look up some of those. I haven't heard of some of those, my friend. Bad Moon. I never heard of that. I know Salem's Lot. I know Night Flyer. Howl. Never heard of that one. I'm going to check some of these out. Those are some interesting choices there. I have to look into that. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. But yeah, Pet Cemetery, another classic, one that I love very much. From the very first time I saw it, again, and kind of like how I said with Psycho, it starts out as like a quiet horror. This is like in a rural area. This isn't like the big city. This isn't like big in your face. It's very quiet horror until the child comes back from the dead. And then, like I said, then the real horror begins. And it's just a very chilling type of movie as you're watching it, because you feel for the guy, because of the pain he's experiencing, but then what he does to try to alleviate it only makes it worse. And again, that's just a very interesting angle to take, I think, with a film like this. And then we get to the final one here. I got, again, Galaxy of Terror by the great Roger Corman, the master of B movies. When you think B movies, you think Roger Corman. And again, I love this classic image. Just like you saw with some of the older ones I have. The Nightmare on Elm Street, the Frightmare. You notice they're painted images on the cover. For the poster. They're drawings and paintings. There's artwork that is done for the poster. It's not just simply let's take some pictures from the movie and just put it on there, or just have take a picture of the cast standing there, and that's our movie poster. There's actually work put into this. I've always liked that. I miss that about modern movies is the work put into the great artistry on the poster, to make you, it makes you want to see the film, even if the film is a bad film, you sometimes you see that image, that poster image, and it says, oh, I got to see that movie. And, that's what it is. You just, it makes you want to see the film. Like this, to me, it makes me want to see this film. Even if it were a bad movie, I'd be like, I got to check this out. Just seeing that image, and but this is one, hell has just been relocated. Now the basis of the story, now this is set in the future, and some people are sent to a planet to investigate something, and well, let's just say some craziness ensues. And you got some great talents here. You got Aaron Moran, Joni from Happy Days. You got the great Ray Walston in there. My favorite Martian, and of course you got some guys in there who weren't really big names, but again, they were up and coming. You have the great Sid Haig, one of my personal favorite, character actors. I saw a lot of his stuff, low budget stuff in the 70s. Loved me some Sid Haig. And you got even Robert Englund. This is from 1981. This is a few years before Freddy Krueger. So again, this is when Robert Englund wasn't even a name yet, and yet he is in this film. And it's got all the all the stuff you expect in a movie. Like see here we are. Here's Sid Haig and Aaron Moran together. You can see, the whole shtick of, space sci-fi because of their outfits and stuff, and playing with the tech. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to find out about this person. Well, what it is it's all really a test. They come to this planet to investigate, and the investigation is all a pretext to test these people out to see if they can overcome their own greatest fears, to attain that next level. And you're saying, well, what next level? The next level that the master that has brought them to this world is testing them against. And of course, as of course, most of them will fail, but there is one, of course, at the end who survives it, and he meets the master, who is Ray Walston. He is the one behind it all. And just again, it's just watching your own fears take you out. That's a very interesting aspect about this film for me. Is I like that idea of like, you're your own worst enemy. It's not what anyone's doing to you that will mess you up. It's what you do to yourself, your own fears, the things you let bother you, the things you let scare you. That's what's going to do you in, because that's how fear works. And it's not, no one can instill fear in you. It's either in you or it isn't. I kind of like that aspect. The things you fear are things you are choosing to fear. And that choice is ultimately what's going to get you. I like that about it. It's, again, very fun way of looking at the element of fear. And again, using a sci-fi setting for it with there's lots of horror in this, lots of killing, lots of some gore. Again, this is a low budget film. So of course you had to have that gore factor in there to spice it up, to keep it from getting too boring, because the plot threads are a little thin. You got characters who argue with each other all the time and stuff like that. There's all the great character moments and all, but it comes down to fear with this film. Galaxy of Terror. It teaches, it's about the fear within yourself is your greatest foe. It's not a Freddy Krueger. It's not a Norman Bates. It's not anything like it's the fear within you that is your greatest foe. And can you, what happens if you can't overcome that? And that's what these people all find out. And again, just a great movie. A lot of, like I said, they said some gross out stuff, but a lot of interesting bits in it. It makes you think, in ways you didn't before. And this is kind of what it did for me. It kind of helped me to see things in a different light when dealing with fear and horror. So that's why I like the film. But again, this is a Roger Corman product, so don't expect high Shakespearean levels of acting or really great high def sort of like special effects and stuff. You're not going to get that in a Roger Corman film. There's a reason he's the master of the B films. But, again, it just shows you that even a low-rent movie like this can still have interesting aspects to it that help raise it above a little bit what you might have otherwise seen, in a film like this. A low-budget film, you usually think it's bad acting and bad set designs and bad camera work. But no, you can still get some decent stuff out of a low-budget film when you have people behind it who care and want to craft something better than maybe what they're being given. And again, like I said, it's just one of my favorites. I've always enjoyed this film. I usually break it out, maybe once a year. I haven't watched it yet this year. Maybe I should watch it tonight. Maybe that's what I'll do. Maybe I'll watch this one tonight for Halloween. I'll check this one out again because, like I said, it's an interesting movie. It makes you think a little bit, which is not something you would normally expect of a Roger Corman film. But it is what it is. But yeah, there we go. So there you go. Just a few of my favorite horror films that I really enjoy, and just to have a lot of fun with. But now we're going to get to the final little bit that I had planned here, and we're going to share the screen one more time. Now I promised you guys some art, and I'm going to fulfill that promise. Now this is a piece that if you saw the video I did about my time at the SummerCon back in June, you might have seen this briefly, but now you're going to get a little more in depth with it. It's almost going to be like an artistry appreciation, but not quite, because we're not going to talk so much about the artist. We're going to talk more about what the art is, and so. Let me go ahead and share that with you guys. And here we are. It's What the number 16 with Forbush Man versus the Spectre of Early Cancellation. And we're going to big that up for you. And this is by Aaron Lepresti, both doing art chores and writing. So, you definitely, it's more on the sillier side of horror. More like horror comedy, but I just really love this page because it's this big half splash, top panel. I mean, if it's got the horrific angle, and then they play it up for last because here he is with holy bloody cleavers, and then here's what, and then you go down to it, and it's like he got the beeve. Oh well, it's not the first time he's gotten the axe. It's Beaver Cleaver, like from Leave It to Beaver, and that's what I loved about the What the series is they would poke fun at stuff. They would poke fun at themselves. They would poke fun at other people like this. The Spectre of Early Cancellation, and he looks like the Spectre from DC Comics. Like when we get into the color version here, let me do that real quick so you can see that. You see, he looks like the Spectre from DC. That's when they're taking a little shot at their competition, and I like that about it. It's fun. And then then just the hatchet job on Beaver Cleaver. Just it's just a lot of fun, but you can definitely see the horror aspects in this, and I like that about it. And but here's the thing: is when you check the cover, this is the front cover. They make a joke about it. Hey, I thought this was the Halloween cover. With, people come up out of the ground, the dead. But if you look at the back cover, and here we are. This is the real horror right there. There it is. But like I said, this is one that was a lot of fun, and I just love the horror aspect with it. It's a nice fun blend of horror and comedy. It's like in the vein of like a scary movie type of thing before there was Scary Movie, that is. And that's what I liked about it. So I just played to two things I love in comics. I love when they don't take themselves so seriously and can have fun, and of course, as you guys know here tonight, I'm a big fan of horror, and this kind of hit both those things for me. So when I saw Aaron at the show and he brought the What the pages that I asked him to bring, and I looked through what he had, I said, the minute I saw that image, I'm like, oh, that's the one. I gotta have that one. That is the one. And it was no bones about it. This is the one I was going to get, and I did. And again, you can see, this is early in Aaron's career. Pardon me. It was early in his career. It was 1991, so he hadn't been working very much. He'd only done stuff for about a year into his career. So I mean, you can see the more cartooniness in his style. Where if you look at the stuff he does today, like with his Wraith of God and Kit Carter and stuff like that, it's not quite the same. This is much, you can see much thicker and bolder lines, whereas now his line is a lot finer, a lot thinner. He knows how to, work it so that, it's not so cartoonish. But for a book like this was the perfect style to have, and again, Forbush Man, come on. It's the Marvel mascot, you gotta love it. It's hilarious as hell to see him in immortal danger against the Spectre of Early Cancellation, which is something I think all comic characters fear. They all fear that creature. Although he's been a lot busier in modern times, I think, than he ever was back in these days, with books lasting 10 issues and then dying and then being rebooted. So, I mean, just, but yeah, here you go. It's a great fun page with a little touch of the horror, a little play at horror. And again, just a lot of fun, which is what you want. You want horror. Just because horror is scary doesn't mean it can't be fun too. And that's what I think this does. So I definitely was very happy to get this one. I'm glad to share it with you guys. I just posted it up today. So if you want to follow the links down there, I got a link to my comic art fans page, and you can head over there and check it out more in detail and read the little write up I did on it. And I kind of had some fun with it. I tried to channel my inner Stan Lee when I was writing that description, because I think this is the kind of thing Stan would have had fun doing too. So I just check that out down there in the description section. You head over and check it out, and let me know what you think. But there we go. That's all I got for you. I was hoping to get some guests on, but everyone else had plans, I guess, for their Halloween, so I couldn't get any guests on. So I had to fly it solo on this. That's why I was boomered up and everything else as always. But I hope this was a little enjoyable for you. I hope you guys had some fun with this. You got to see some sweet art. You got to see some cool monsters. You got to talk about talk about great films. Maybe some ideas for you for Halloween. You can check out some of those films for yourself and watch them tonight. Maybe that's what you can do, and just have a good time with it, because that to me is what it's all about. It's all about having a good time. It's Halloween. Yeah, it's a scary time, but it's a fun time. So let's have a good time with it. So that's what I tried to bring you tonight. I hope I did. I hope I helped kick off your Halloween in enough of a scariness adventure type way, so that you can have a lot more fun as the evening progresses. But been at this for over an hour, and so I know it's getting late, and you guys are probably got, if you're not doing parties, you probably got kids showing up now. So and I know mine probably kids are gonna be probably showing up sooner than later too. So I need to probably get ready myself, get my Jason mask ready, and just scare some kids before I give them some candy. It should be a good time. But I thank you all for joining me tonight, and I want to say once again to if you like what you saw here, give a like to help out those algorithms. I appreciate that very much. If you got any comments, drop them below. I want to hear what you got to say. What do you think of the movie choices I had? Do you think they're great? Do you think they're not? Or be like my buddy Leg Kick here and throw out some movies you think I should check out if you didn't like my choices. And what's your favorite comic book monster? Tell me down below. I want to hear what you guys got to say. And also, be sure to subscribe if you haven't subscribed, so you don't miss any of the boomered up content that I'm doing around here, because that's just that's just the way it is. I'm not a professional, folks, although I try to pretend to be. Yeah, I play one on TV, but I'm not really. But I had a good time with this. I hope you guys all did too. I'll be back soon with some more stuff, and also be sure to check out some of the other stuff I've just done this week. I did a artist appreciation yesterday with Dave Cockrum and a piece of art from Creepy Magazine from Warren back in the 70s. And I did a Why It's Great episode with Fantastic Four, featuring a little bit of a horror-themed type of story from a sci-fi angle, kind of like in the realm of Galaxy of Terror in a way. And so you can, again, links to those are down below. You can check out the playlist for those and check out the newest editions, because I always like to keep you guys informed, and I will be back soon with some more stuff. And until next time, stay safe.